Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome to Pretty Girl University. Class is starting. In this video, I want to talk about my former addiction to makeup. That's the best way I can describe it. And I also want to talk about facial dysmorphia. So that's another phrase that I just made up. And I want to talk about this because I really do feel like in order to gain a stronger sense of self-love and self-confidence, there are certain things that I had to do along my journey to help me to restore my sense of self. So, as far as my background goes, I was raised in a very strict Christian household. I come from generation after generation of pastors and ministers. So, wearing makeup and stuff like that was heavily discouraged. I used to sneak and wear makeup, like in high school and stuff, but I was not allowed to wear makeup until I was 18. So, by the time I went off to college and went to my HBCU, I was so excited to finally have the freedom to wear the makeup that I wanted to wear. So, a part of my views with makeup were that makeup is a form of seduction. Makeup is something that women use to lure men in. It is something that like Jezebels wear. Even if you look in the Bible, they talk about how women shouldn't be obsessed with like braiding their hair and wearing fancy jewelry. So when it came to things like beauty and makeup and stuff, I always saw that kind of stuff as more of this forbidden fruit when I was a child. And I think part of this comes from the sexualization that I received as a child. I was very heavily policed, not just by my family, not just by the Black community. I was also policed by the church, including the white church as well. And unfortunately, I grew up around a lot of groomers, and the types of groomers that I grew up around were actually white men. So a lot of you guys may notice that I have some smoke for divestors or white men, or you may notice that I don't really put non-blackness on a pedestal. Well, part of it is because of my background. I did grow up around a lot of people who would try to like groom me and stuff like that. And unfortunately, they happen to be in the church, or they happen to be in these private, prestigious schools that I was going to, these very expensive schools, or, they happen to be at the Lutheran church that I was going to. So I came from a background that was extremely sheltered and extremely restricted. Growing up, I was not allowed to listen to secular music. I was not allowed to watch secular TV that was like rated PG-13 and above. My parents put parental controls on the TV, so I was just extremely sheltered. And that included when it came to beauty and makeup. So I was used to a lot of people trying to control my beauty. And by the time I hit about 18, I was so excited to finally wear makeup because then I would have some sort of sense of power. When I used to think about makeup, I thought of makeup as this thing that I could use to kind of restore my own sense of femininity or to kind of like bring me into adulthood. So I remember like putting on all the different types of makeup, the little eyeshadows, the little lip glosses. This is back during like the Y2K area. So lip gloss was like really, my lip gloss was popping, okay? But I remember something else that used to happen to me was actually humbling tactics. So other people around me, they would be like, why are you wearing so much makeup? And sometimes I wouldn't even be wearing makeup. I would just be wearing lip gloss, and people would try to police me like, why are you wearing makeup? Why are you wearing that? Why are you wearing blush? And it seemed like no matter what I did, it was wrong. So if I was wearing makeup, I was wearing the wrong color or the wrong shade. Like I had people of all races that would try to do different humbling tactics. Like I remember one time this one white girl at church, she was like, oh, are you wearing foundation? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I can tell because your face looks orange. Like when you walk outside, your face turns orange. So I remember people doing all kinds of like different humbling tactics, or if there were any flaws in my makeup whatsoever, people would call it out. And I really do feel like when you are perceived as someone who's pretty, or when you come from a background where people are controlling, so maybe a religious background or some sort of misogynistic background, then people have a tendency to nitpick everything you do. And so when it came to makeup, you know what I did actually? When I was about 18 or 19 years old, I learned how to do makeup so well to the point where I literally started doing makeup artistry. Like in between high school and college, I was going to go to school to be able to do that kind of stuff professionally so that I could have that as my job when I was in college. And so I became obsessed with perfectionism. And part of it was because I grew up in a background where everybody expected me to be perfect. And even if they didn't say that, I really felt that projected onto me because from the time I was a child, first of all, I had the Black community telling me that basically I'm going to grow up to be trouble, or that, I get a lot of attention, or that because of my phenotype, I'm going to have a different experience than other people. Or they would project me being conceited. Like they would just project that onto me before I even knew how to spell the word conceited when I was in elementary school. So I had the Black community giving me that vibe when I was growing up. And then with the white community, I had the white community having this shock factor around me and kind of wanting to hide me because they were afraid that I would seduce men. Like I literally got kicked out of church. Actually, I've been kicked out of church multiple times. Maybe I'll do some episodes about that. But I have been kicked out of church when I was a teenager. One time it was because I was distracting the boys. By the way, I did nothing to the guys. I literally just walked in the church. I was wearing a polo shirt and some jeans, but because of my shape, and I was in a white church, and there happened to be, like, as far as the youth group, there were all races of people that went to the youth group. But as far as the people who were in charge of the church, they were more so like white women and stuff. Also, I hit puberty. I would say that I developed curves around about 10 years old. And unfortunately, around that time is when I faced a lot of assault. Unfortunately, I did face a lot of sexual assault once I hit puberty. Like that was something that happened to me multiple times. I might talk more about that kind of stuff on Patreon or on my members page. And another unfortunate thing that happened was most of the guys who assaulted me were Black men. And then by the time I grew up and kind of got into junior high and high school, a lot of the groomers around me were white men. So just a little bit of background. So I'm being controlled by my religious background. I've got the Black community kind of in awe, almost pedestalizing. I mean, if you guys saw my episodes about texturism and phenotype, you'll see my experiences with that. Then there were a lot of unfortunate assault situations from Black men. Mainly from teenage Black boys that were around me when I was around 10 years old. And then going into high school, dealing with lots of creepy white men who were groomers in their 30s and 40s and, saying I'm sexy and shit. And then the white women knowing about this type of behavior. And by the way, as far as the white community that I grew up around, I've noticed that a lot of people in the Black community who have only been around Black people think that Black people are somehow the only ones who protect predators. That is false, because I remember being around women where they literally would know that a guy was like a predator, and then they would say stuff like, oh, we're Christians, we forgive. So I remember being in the midst of like predators and stuff, and then having the white women policing my clothing, policing my outfits and stuff, and saying that I'm a distraction. I remember like when I was in high school, I was on the cheer squad. And so we all would wear like our cheerleading outfits whenever it was a game day. And then of course, I get called into the principal's office because, oh, my skirt is too short. And basically like it goes above my fingertips. So my parents and also the school that I went to, the private school, they had a rule that like the skirts that you wore, they had to go past your fingertips, which mine did. But because I'm tall and because of my shape and everything, and because I also look different and I would stand out, and because my phenotype was sexualized, in my opinion, I believe that there was some sort of fetish at play there, or some sort of sexualization of my phenotype, because my parents would never ever let me walk out of the house looking seductive or looking slutty. But I had a lot of people kind of associating me with being seductive when I wasn't trying to be seductive. I would just be wearing jeans, but because I have an hourglass shape, somehow I'm a distraction. And so I remember a lot of the white women at school and stuff too, trying to protect these predator ass PE teachers and like these creepy ass men that would be there, or, they would make comments that like, I remember one time we did a dance routine. Like, how when you're on the cheer squad, you learn the different cheers, or you do a dance at like the little halftime or whatever. So we would do our dances, and then the freaking cheer coach, who was white, she would complain that like, oh my God, Exoticals United, you're shaking your hips too much. So they literally complained and they called my mom saying that I was trying to basically like be sexy and like shake my hips too much. Meanwhile, I was doing the exact same routine as everyone else. So because my actual body shape is a shape that is heavily sexualized, I have like the Coke bottle hourglass type of shape and I'm slim as well. And so because I have that shape, I always felt like that was very heavily sexualized. And so, of course, I can't wear makeup because if you've got the shape and you're also taller than everyone and you're wearing makeup, oh, you're going to look like an adult. I mean, that's what people would tell me. They would say that, makeup makes you look older or makes you look like an adult. And basically, I was too young or like I don't want to attract adult attention when I'm just a young girl. But looking back, that's actually extremely male identified behavior because those women at the school and at the church or even in my family, they were actually suppressing my feminine expression in order to protect men from like being predators. And by the way, they were definitely still predators. So they actually failed. They did not protect me from anything. They didn't protect me from any assault or grooming from black men or from white teachers. I think I might do a small series about my white high school teachers and some of the crazy shit that happened. Like, have you ever seen those shows? Have you ever seen that show Cruel Summer or like stuff like that? Yeah. I've got plenty of stories. Thankfully, I was not dumb, so I didn't like fall for any of that stuff to the extreme. But I have a lot of stories like that. And so even though I had always wanted to wear makeup, my family and friends and the religion I was a part of and just everybody around me, they associated me personally with makeup as like a bad combination. They felt like, oh no, if you put her in makeup, then it's going to be too much basically. So the other girls, they could wear makeup since they were like 13. They could wear makeup in middle school, like in junior high, nobody cared because they were not sexualized or they were not seen as sexy. And by the way, I did grow up getting called sexy from the time I was a child. So that's how I know that I was being sexualized. It's because adults would literally say, oh, look at you, you're sexy. Oh, look at her hair, she's sexy. Or like teachers, junior high teachers, white men, oh, she's fucking sexy. So looking back, that's very weird. That's extreme grooming behavior. And so I feel like a part of the way that people were trying to protect me was to not allow me to wear makeup. And I didn't realize that until I got older. But as soon as I turned 18, I started wanting to wear makeup. And so once I went to an HBCU and stuff like that, people would kind of use these humbling tactics against me. And I will say that the makeup and stuff, it definitely did attract male attention as well, just like anything else. And I noticed that a lot of women, they would get kind of like jealous or upset that I would be receiving male attention and that they wouldn't. And I remember thinking at that time, like, why do these women care about getting this male attention? Because I didn't realize that the male attention that I was getting had anything to do with like whether it was my phenotype or my background or my looks. I thought that every girl had guys trying to, assault her or had guys trying to maybe date her or something or groom her. I didn't know that there was a such thing as women who wear makeup and stuff and they are invisible. Because I always felt overexposed as a child and as a teenager. I always felt hypervisible to the point where I was basically scared of my own beauty as an adult. Like as a young adult in my 20s, I basically had a whole phase where I was scared of my own beauty because people taught me from the time I was a child, my body causes a stir. It causes people to get very worked up or it causes other women to become uncomfortable. Basically, I was socialized to believe that my presence and my body and face and all that stuff causes other women to be uncomfortable, that it tempts men or that it causes men to become predators. And so I felt like this fear of my own beauty, basically. And so with me wearing a bunch of makeup and stuff or kind of getting into makeup as a hobby, in my late teens and early 20s, that was my way of attempting to take back my power and kind of take back ownership over my own femininity. But then as soon as I did that, then other people, they started saying the same talking points basically, like, oh, you think you're cute, or why are you wearing so much makeup, when in reality I was wearing like a pretty normal amount of makeup. I mean, it was pretty cringy though, it's during the early 2000s. So yes, I mean, my face was definitely orange. But at that point, I had so much chaos and confusion and so many adults and people around me sending me these different signals about my body to the point where I was like, okay, so should I not wear makeup because I'm going to attract too much sexual attention? Because I was raised to believe that sex is bad. Sex is bad. You should definitely not have sex before marriage. I absolutely was not raised to have sex before marriage and stuff. And so makeup was associated with being sexy, but I associated being sexy with just being an adult and kind of feeling like, I'm taking ownership over myself. But then I dealt with a lot of kind of like pick me women who would scrutinize no matter how my makeup looked. I would get criticized. Like if I'm wearing a little bit of makeup, then it's, oh, well, you didn't do the full contour. You didn't do the cheeks. You forgot to put on blush. And then if I did a lot of makeup, it's, oh, it's too much makeup. And so I remember I got to a point where I almost had kind of like this facial dysmorphia to the point where I would spend all of these hours watching all of these different makeup tutorials, learning all of these different techniques to the point where I became really good at makeup. So I had all the primers, all of the color correctors, all of the different brushes and stuff like that, the highlighter, the contour, I could match the undertones. Shout out to you if you have neutral undertones, because literally every foundation, it's too orange, it's too red. But yeah, I remember learning all this stuff about makeup, and it got to the point where I basically became a perfectionist in terms of makeup, because I was like, okay, I don't want to wear too much makeup, but I don't want to wear too little makeup or like not do the makeup look properly. So I'm going to spend all this time doing my makeup perfectly so that I can have a no makeup look. So that was kind of my staple. I went from anywhere from like no makeup to like a soft glam. So not like the extremely glamorous or anything, but like maybe a soft glam sometimes. The same thing happened even when I was in college. So there was one night where I was washing my face. I was in the dorm room, and I was washing my face in the bathroom, and we all shared a bathroom on the entire floor. So I had washed off my makeup, and this one girl, she was like, "Oh, Exoticals United, I've never seen you without makeup. Oh, I guess you really are pretty." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, at first I thought that maybe you just wear makeup because you must be ugly without makeup." And so then, hearing comments like that, like, "Oh, I've been curious to see you without makeup." I remember people would like try to watch me do makeup, or they would ask me for different tips about makeup. They were just fascinated by my makeup process. And I think part of it was because I was doing makeup on campus. So like I used to do makeup for people's pageants and stuff, just like on the side. So I kind of thought of it as, okay, maybe they're just curious, but I also thought of it as, oh, I'm some sort of makeup guru, or at least like they're treating me like I am some sort of makeup expert or something. So I better make sure my makeup is on point 24/7. And this is the trap that I feel like a lot of pretty women fall into. A lot of people expect you, when you're pretty, they expect you to be perfect. They expect you to constantly look perfect. They expect you to have all these random soft skills. Like apparently, if you're pretty, you're supposed to also be a professional hairstylist, a professional makeup artist. You're supposed to know how to dress modestly and classy, but also you can't be too seductive because, oh, we got to protect the predators. So, you can't draw too much attention to yourself because then the women are going to get offended. And so I really do feel like a lot of women end up in this cognitive dissonance. And so that's basically what happened to me. And so I got to a point where I was like basically addicted to makeup. I was like, okay, I have to at least wear some sort of foundation, maybe a little bit of powder or something in the T-zone area, just to make sure that my skin looks perfect. And I also remember sometimes men, even when I was in college, sometimes men would try to use humbling tactics. So for example, I remember there was one time when I was in class at an HBCU, and there was actually this one Indian guy there. So he like had a crush on me or whatever. And I remember he was trying to nag me. So you know how guys, they will like try to roast you as a humbling tactic. So it was the end of the day, and I didn't have my blotting papers. And so sometimes when I put on my dewy foundation, I would get just a little bit oily if I left my makeup on after 5 p.m. So yes, I would time my makeup. So I would set the timer like, okay, if I'm doing my makeup at 8 a.m., I know that my NARS foundation will last on my skin until about 5 p.m. and then it's going to start getting oily. So I would have my little blotting papers, I would have my powder with me or something. So that day I didn't have any of that. And so my nose, it was a little bit oily. And then this guy in class, he calls it out. He's like, "Oh, Exoticals United, oh, your face, it looks a little bit oily. Like you need to wash your face. You need to wash your nose or something." And honestly, my nose, it looked like a normal nose, but it just wasn't perfect. And after that, he said like, "Oh no, I'm just kidding. You look great." But the way that I took it at that time was, okay, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. And so I have to try to make sure that my makeup is perfect 24/7, even if all I'm wearing is foundation. I'm not even allowed to have a little bit of oil on my skin at the end of the day. I'm not even allowed to have an eyelash out of place because someone's going to call it out. I'm not allowed for my eyeliner to be smudged a little bit because someone's going to call it out. And so that perfectionism led me to constantly be doing my makeup 24/7 to the point where sometimes in college I would wake up extra early just so I could do my makeup. I would do like the little contouring thing underneath my foundation because that was in style back then. So do you remember kind of like 2015 or somewhere around that time where contouring and highlighting was more of a thing? So I would do that. And I remember I literally started getting breakouts. So I normally don't have acne or anything like that. But because I kept using these brushes and like not washing the brushes, or the brush was like very cheap and rough and I was like being very rough on my skin, it caused me to start having little tiny breakouts. And so I would try to heal my little breakout and then I would put makeup over it to cover it up. So then I really couldn't be seen without the makeup because, then you could see these little dark marks. And you all know that if you're light skinned, oh my God, how dare you have a dark mark on your face or have dark elbows and knees and be light skinned, because people are going to call it out. Or if you have dark lips, people are going to definitely call it out. If you have eczema and you have a lighter skin tone, people will call it out. Any sort of darkness or redness on the skin was another thing that people would call out. So yeah, I remember being afraid of that. I remember I would use like the green primer. I'm actually about to get some more soon, but I would use the green primers to make sure that like my redness and stuff would go away so that nobody made any comments like, "Oh, your face looks red. Oh my God." So basically, it was an insecurity to the point of facial dysmorphia, to where I was like, "Oh my God, I look so horrible with no makeup." And in reality, I didn't look horrible. There was nothing wrong with me. But because I allowed other people to project their own internalized insecurities onto me, it did cause me to start taking on some of those insecurities. So the way that I overcame it was, as soon as I started breaking out and stuff, I took a picture of my skin and I took a picture of like the little marks on it and I was like, okay, these need to like get healed. And so I started to gradually not wear as much makeup. So I would go maybe one day without wearing eyeliner. So maybe I would wear all my other makeup, but I would just skip the eyeliner that day. And then, every couple of days I would switch it up. And I remember one of my ex-boyfriends at the time, he's the one who actually made the comment where he was like, "Oh, you forgot to put on blush today." And he had said that because I didn't do my contouring that day, because I was trying to overcome kind of this addiction to perfection, or like trying to be perceived as perfect, because so many people were paying attention to how I did something as simple as my makeup. But back then I didn't have the emotional intelligence to tell my boyfriend at the time like, "Oh, hey, I'm trying to practice, overcoming feeling addicted to makeup." I didn't tell him that at the time. I just ended up ghosting him and dumping him. Maybe I'll tell that story time actually. So I actually ghosted that guy and I ended up like upgrading. Well, it wasn't an upgrade according to my standards now, but according to my 19-year-old standards, I ended up upgrading. But a part of how I got rid of the whole facial dysmorphia was, number one, on Instagram, I refused to do editing and stuff like that. So this is before filters were like really common and popular. This is back when like you could just do basic editing. But that was one thing. I refused to do like extreme editing and all that. And then number two, I started to gradually remove things out of my daily makeup routine. And then I remember I tried to make it like this whole soft life routine. So I would go to Trader Joe's. I would walk to the Trader Joe's and then I would like get some honey or something. And I started making my own little face mask so I could kind of heal any sort of scars and stuff. And I ended up being able to heal my skin. And then after that, I started just drinking smoothies and like trying to eat healthy. And then I was able to gradually kind of work my way up to where, you know, I no longer have to wear a smoky eye. Now I don't have to wear eyeliner either. Now I don't have to do my contouring either. Now I don't have to do the lipstick either. So I started to kind of interchangeably eliminate things from my makeup routine until finally, I remember I finally worked up the nerve to where all I was wearing was concealer under my eyes. So no makeup on the rest of my face, only a little bit of concealer under my eyes. And I remember I also had my hair in a ponytail that day. So my face is just out there, you know, because your hair is like slicked back in a ponytail. And I remember looking in the mirror and my skin had cleared up so much because I had stopped wearing the makeup and I stopped like suffocating it 24/7. So my skin had cleared up so much. And because I was also eating a healthy diet and stuff, it looked like I was wearing foundation when I actually wasn't. Another thing that I noticed once I stopped wearing makeup for about a month was that I still got treated the same. You know, I still got treated normally. I still received compliments as normal. So there was nothing about not wearing makeup to where it was like a bad experience. So all of the fear that I had before about people criticizing me or saying like, "Oh, you're not wearing makeup. Oh my god, you look so bad or you look different." None of those fears actually came to pass, and it taught me a valuable lesson about how oftentimes the fears that we have, especially social fears, which means like fear of what people think of you, fear of being roasted, fear of being exposed, oftentimes the thoughts in your head are worse than what it actually is. I mean, I used to be afraid of people arguing back with me on YouTube. I used to be afraid of people exposing me, doxing me, roasting me, but look at me now. All of those things have happened and I'm still here. And so I've learned a valuable lesson that, first of all, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And secondly, if I just live my life based on fear, then I don't get to enjoy the spoils of stepping outside of my comfort zone. And also, the same people who go out of their way to call out your flaws or expose you, or I don't know, maybe they don't want to be associated with you because they're embarrassed or something like that. Those same types of people will never make it as far as you anyway, because those people tend to have good girl syndrome. You know, they do what everyone else wants them to do. They say what everyone else wants them to say. They look how everyone else wants them to look. And that's what happened with my makeup journey and kind of like my journey of loving myself. So the more I allowed other people's voices and opinions to influence me, the lower my self-esteem was. And so that's why I called it facial dysmorphia, because I was unable to really appreciate the beauty in my own face because other people were projecting onto me. So I was just kind of going with the wind. So if there was one makeup trend that everybody was doing, then I'm doing it. If somebody critiqued my makeup, then I'm changing my makeup. Like no matter what somebody said, I would literally try to change and morph myself so that I don't like shake the table or so that I don't stir anybody's feelings up. But that was kind of how I ended my facial dysmorphia. It was just by taking a break from all the different makeup items until gradually I didn't wear any makeup at all. Another thing I did too at the same time was taking a break from relationships, because I noticed that with the whole makeup thing, whenever I had a boyfriend when I was like, 18 to about early 20s, that influenced my makeup stuff more because, you're around a guy, you naturally, maybe you're going out more and stuff like that. And so I decided when I was in my early 20s to take a break from relationships and dating as well. And that helped me to have more space to really like express myself and also to heal my own relationship within myself instead of thinking about the male gaze. So I guess I was technically a little bit decentered back then, even if it was only temporary. But what do you ladies think? Have you ever had facial dysmorphia? Have you ever been scared to go out in public with no makeup on? Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.